Good evening and welcome to the Fort Smith City Board of Directors study session on this March 11th, 2025. Welcome to the Elder Bowl Center. That's in the city. In the city. A lot of things going on. I hope you notice the kids are playing basketball, soccer, baseball, all kinds of activities take place there. We'll go right to the first item on the agenda.
Thank you, Mayor. The first item on the agenda is an annual review of the board best practices document. That document is in the board's packet and has been updated for several, in place for several years and updated periodically to govern how the board conducts itself during the course of its meetings. And when it was adopted, it was committed to that the board would review it every year and to make any suggested changes. One suggested changes from administration or a few references to meetings that we have done in the past and called brainstorming sessions and some other references like that. The language is a lot dated, we're not doing those anymore. And with references to the public comment period and citizens forums need to be reconciled with how we currently conduct the business. So those small changes in wording of language from the administration pass it to the board for any further comment on that board best practices.
Any comments from the board?
I agree with Jeff. I agree with what the suggestion.
Okay. All right. For sure.
Okay, motion to put that, motion to put that on the item for consideration.
Thank you. Second. Okay. Thank you very much. Ms. Turner. Yes.
Go ahead. but we don't have a clear process for what happens when those expectations aren't followed. And I would like to explore adding something simple, maybe an informal mediation step or a structured way to address when repeated issues in a productive manner. That could include a private reminder from the mayor, a facilitated discussion to resolve conflicts, or in rare cases, a formal acknowledgement if issues continue. Since the mayor is already responsible for maintaining an order and decorum in meetings, it makes sense that they would also have a role in fostering productive discussions when tensions arise. For me, it's not about calling anything out, but to ensure that our meetings are staying professional, collaborative, effective, where it says in section 5 that personal attacks and disruptive behavior, quote, won't be tolerated, but it has no specifics on what happened when that does occur. And so I think we should write in there something about requiring a mayor or vice mayor to address breaches of decorum immediately, or even implement a process where repeated violations lead to maybe a public reminder of best practices, or in some cases, in extreme cases, censure. But I mean, to me, when I got this document and I read it, if we have it, I think it needs to reflect the spirit of best practices, and it has nothing in there about enforcement. And the only other thing I wanted to say about it was, I would love some sort of write-up about a mediation approach on deadlocked issues. You know, there's a quote in there that says the emphasis is on seeking consensus in section 2, which is good, but it's not an actionable phrase. So maybe we consider a procedural rule when there's going to be a 4-3 vote or a 4-3 consensus brewing, that we would give pause and allow the city administration to frame up potential compromise options before we come to a final vote. You know, either that, or if consensus is not the thing, then I think maybe consider a rewrite. Those are my thoughts.
Okay, thank you very much. Any further comments on that? Okay, then we'll go to item B.
Item 2 is items regarding homelessness this evening. The first item is the discussion regarding homelessness in the city of Fort Smith. To start off that discussion, the board asked for this discussion item to be placed on tonight's agenda. I would call possibly the chief of police, and birds at the window, but call the chief of police to start this discussion and introduce the crime analyst to review the information that was in the board's packet.
Well, let's discuss it. Actually, I thought we were going to be called up to the discussion, so we can't get this kicked off here as well. You know, I've said multiple times, I've said about all I can say about this. I think the police department is doing everything that we can to address the issue. Obviously, homelessness is an issue in Fort Smith. It's an issue in nearly every major or medium-sized city in the country right now. I think it's a product of a number of things, substance abuse being one of them, but more likely mental illness is left untreated and unhoused people that should be probably under a physician's care somewhere that are out roaming our streets. So that leaves us, unfortunately, the police are the ones most likely to encounter these folks and any interactions that they have with people around COVID. So I understand the need for me to be here to talk about this. But I did bring our in-house crime analyst tonight. She has compiled a number of raw numbers relating to specifically police calls for service to two of the major homeless providers in the city, whole canvas and things that they are. She can give you a little bit better picture about what kind of calls we actually respond to, the number of calls that we go to those places and what they consist of. You have her step up here if you've got any questions of me at this point.
Chief,
Yes, sir.
when you look at the calls that you get in, are these one of the top areas of the police department? Those two, and that includes intersections, everything?
It's not the top, no. I mean, there are a number of other places in the city that receive more police calls for service than either one of these places. I would say it's probably near the top. I don't know how far down the list it would be, but I mean, our Walmart stores, individually, particularly one on Zero Street, I think have the most calls. The hospitals have the largest number of calls. The police department, just because that's where people come to the report things.
Thank you, sir.
That gives you, Ann Miller, our crime man.
Real quick, and this might be for you, Ken. So in the component where we were talking about the downtown entertainment district, was that, there's a number of crimes there, or a number of items that were addressed. You've got a blotter that's showing, a number of different instances of some sort of crime. Does that include traffic accidents, or is it specifically related to homeless individuals? I thought maybe I saw that in there, but I wasn't just verifying
It's
about it.
gonna include, the maps will include offense and incidents reports, which will include traffic stops.
Okay, okay, but when we get down into the numbers, like, on page 27, when we're talking about arrests and things like that, that's specifically going to be related to folks classified as homeless.
No, so, really,
Because I wanted to make sure that I could look, the reason I'm asking, I wanted to make sure that I could look at this and what I'm seeing is an accurate representation of what we're talking about tonight, and didn't have all these other things mixed in.
no, the downtown entertainment district is going to be reflective of all calls for service that we acquired from 2022 to 2025.
So if I had a fender bender,
If you had a fender bender, an incident at Roosters, or, the Steel Horse Rally, like any time that we were active down in the downtown entertainment district, those calls are gonna be included in this.
okay, and so specifically on page 27, where you're talking about, there's arrests, there's traffic incident, assault, simple assault, it's 27 in my packet, that's gonna include all of those things.
Yeah, it's gonna include the whole population that was downtown in that area that,
Okay, so maybe the component around downtown entertainment district could be a little skewed in
Yes.
terms of what's there. Now, I could probably get a better representation of an issue related to homelessness centered around the numbers for Next Step and for Hopkins.
yes.
I mean, I guess it could also include traffic accidents as well, but I think that's probably a better representation of a problem, or it's better representation of maybe something we're dealing with as it relates to homelessness.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Right, we go.
This is just to help me understand the definition. There's an example of it on page 32. It's used multiple times. What is a CSEE party called?
C party, that's just how, if we had a call for service that came in that was either self-initiated or on the non-emergency line, they would want somebody contacted at that location. So whether it be an individual that works at that location or somebody who was seeking police help, it's kind of a conglomerate of different things that they might go to that scene for.
You can call the police for everything, and not everything has a crime associated with it.
Sure.
So, see the party is a call type that encompasses all of those things that may not fall under actual criminal classification, that the dispatcher will entertain that call and say, okay, this is a disturbance call, which would have its own call type. This is an intoxicated person, which would have its own call type. See the party just means, we need to send an officer there to talk to somebody about a nondescript issue.
Okay, thank you.
Direct settle.
On page 34 of the entertainment district, good chart, good information. The middle chart with the green, the red, the yellow. Can we pull the vehicle stops out of that and send it to the board and let's see what's without the vehicle stops? And vehicle stops is number one.
If there's anything else we can pull out as well.
I was just thinking about pulling that out, just looking at that itself. And it can be done, emails tomorrow or next day, just, I think pulling that out would give me a better understanding where is high crime still went before, is it down fluctuated at different times? So,
So, okay. Yeah, I can work on that, just so this, okay.
thank you so much.
Yes, sir.
Appreciate it.
Direct, you want.
Yeah, a couple of things that I have, a couple of observations. And I'm not gonna focus on the downtown entertainment district, but next step. So it looks like there's 173 calls for service a year, based just on my math.
Yeah.
So that's one every other day is being called to next step. Whole campus is a little different. That's 783 calls for service per year, just based on my math, which averages out to 2.14 a day. Now, that's just the police, right? This doesn't include fire. Does fire come out? Fire pretty much comes out every call.
We get about 30 a month down there.
If it's a medical issue, the fire will be called,
Yeah.
but
Okay.
this is just police call.
Okay. So it's somewhere north of 2 a day.
Yes.
In terms of services being called. 2024 appears to be higher across the board
Yes.
with all your numbers. Any idea what the reasoning for that may be in your opinion?
So maybe, I got here in April of 2024, so all I know is that year. We had a lot of officer initiated action. We had a downtown unit, a special operations division that were on bikes, and they were active in the downtown.
So maybe we're initiating those contacts more now.
Yes, we had a lot of stuff, and I think the majority of our calls were self-initiated calls in that area. The problem with the self-initiated calls, what I found out when I was doing this project is, when somebody calls our front desk in order to create the incident or offense number, or call for service number in our CAD system, they were creating a self-initiated call. So that's also like skewing those numbers a little bit, so.
Yeah, so 2024 is higher. On page 57, we list number of arrests. And this was interesting to me. A lot of times you'll get a news report of someone that's been arrested X number of times. And everybody's like, how is this person out of jail? Let me get down here. So yeah, 57. So we've got our top arrestee has been arrested 28 times. From this list, and looking at the goal of, I think what the goal was for Hope Campus, I think that especially for Hope Campus, and some of you guys in the room can maybe fill me in, especially on the board. The way I understand it was Hope Campus was there to support those from our area. And I don't know if you can answer this question. But do we know where these offenders that have been arrested a large number of times, where they're from? I know it says homeless, but the way I remember Director Sell talking is Hope Campus was to serve those in need from our area. And we hear chatter that we're getting a lot of people from outside of the city of Fort Smith, outside of this area. Do we have any way to tie back to where these folks originally came from?
So, like I said, there were 2,158 arrests that were defined as homeless in our CAD and RMS. Of those, there was 1,024 unique persons. I didn't do a background on each of those persons.
don't even know if you have that information. That might be something that maybe Hope would have. Police department wouldn't have that. So I would hope as Hope and as next step, as they come up, if they could shed some light on maybe some of those individuals. My assumption is they might know who these individuals are and can maybe provide a little guidance there. But I really like to see that and see if it's true what we hear or what I've heard. And again, anecdotal, I think some of it comes, Director Sell has made mention of folks not being from this area, being bussed in, being shipped in. And is that a trip of these high offenders? Are these the ones that are those folks coming from outside? Are these the ones that are getting arrested repeatedly?
Would you like I guess, a list of more of the people on that list, or?
We have to be careful about
Yeah.
too much information, but I think we could find out or make reasonable efforts to find out where the people, what did you say, 28?
28 was the high, it went down to 7 arrests. And some of these folks, like the lowest person on the list was arrested 7 times in 22 and then hadn't been arrested again. So something's changed there. So I don't necessarily have a big concern about that individual, but this person at the top, 15 arrests, 7 arrests, 6 arrests. I want to be able to see if we can kind of tie some of that back.
Right, Kim, do you have any comments?
Yeah, I mean, I think we might have had things out of order on this point. I think it'd be better for Hope Campus to give their report than I maybe bring my questions, because I think they can speak to this. As this was an accusation that was kind of brought against Hope Campus. So I think probably what I'll do is refer my questions and discussions for later. I would prefer to hear from Hope Campus, and then I can make my comments.
Well, I would like to say something to clean up some of the conversations we talked about. There's no question in my mind that the increase in the number of police calls is due largely to the increase of police presence in and around the downtown and these places. We have significantly increased. As I said the last time I talked about this, downtown district is the most policed area of the city of Fort Smith. And I'm not going to make a comment of whether it should be or shouldn't be, but we are engaging more people in that area intentionally to try to help solve this problem. So that's driving those numbers up. As to where people are coming from, some of these folks probably came here from somewhere else and have been here now for a while. And so technically they're residents of Fort Smith. And there was one other thing that slipped my mind now. But we can drill down on any of this data that you want specifically to, try to answer any questions that you might have about it. But you got to be careful about that. It can be helpful, but it's only as good as what's being plugged into it. And be careful. I would admonish you not to take actions based off of information that may not be clear. Let's make sure that that we're clear about the answers to all the questions you have before we make any decisions. The last thing, one thing that I did take away from this data and that I believe for a long time is that while this population does put a significant drain on not just police resources, but fire resources, emergency medical resources, our downtown businesses, the number of serious crimes that they commit is not that high. And most of those crimes are committed among that population. They're not attacks on our citizens that are visiting the downtown area. I mean, for the most part, they stay to themselves. And so that's what I wanted to say.
Thank you.
Yes.
How many service providers do you have? Service providers. Yes. Who all would like to speak? Just come forward. Chris?
Sharon and I spoke together.
Hey, Mayor,
Yeah.
if I could, I was just going to suggest that we could let Hope Campus give a presentation, if that would be okay with the colleagues, and then if I could go over the memorandum that I put in, then it might be helpful to hear from those
top people, Sharon Chapman, the Director of Next Step Homeless Services, sorry. I did look up at the top 3 people around the Next Step area, and 2 of the 3 are absolutely homegrown. I don't know about the third one, I'm gonna have to go back and find out. Also, I did want to point out that in our, I totally agree that the presence of the bike patrol and everything, you know, we have a captive audience who is there when we are open, and it's a great opportunity for police officers to come and find people who have violations and things like that that may be included in the growth statistics. Because we have a population that's there, as you can see, the hours that we have the most incidences are around the time we're open, around lunch, when most of our clients are there. And then I was just gonna say, addressing the whole crime statistic thing, we want you to know that our housing program is really involved with our alternative sentencing, because in 2024, we housed 57 people who were involved in drug court, mental health court, veterans court, and probation parole. We're working with them throughout. So that's 57 people for a housed that we're working with. So we are trying to work with those that have fences and are trying to work through those.
Thanks, Chris.
So I apologize, I didn't bring it inside with me, but I emailed it to everybody, I think, on Friday, so. But I guess I would like to talk about a few different things while it's gonna come up. Homelessness just in 2024 has raised 19%. And I believe in my report, we went up 6%. So we were bucking against the trend. Also, we just completed a point in time count. And the point in time count for everybody that was living here. So we asked everybody how long they'd lived here. So in answer to that question, 82% have lived here for a year or more. And then others open to answer any other questions you might have.
Kim, any comments?
I know it's easy for us to hear chatter that we have attracted homeless people because we started the Hope Campus. But I'll remind us that Hope Campus was full 4 days after opening. We closed down river campgrounds and did some things to provide hope for people, hence the name Hope Campus. But I would think that we need to make sure we understand this is our problem. And it's something that we should work on. And if we don't like the results we're getting, doing different things. I think the sidewalk ordinance that we're trying to talk about here is important because it structures a lot of framework, especially if we can achieve a good workflow that I propose. But these are just beginning steps. I think it's a tension that's managed and not a problem that's solved. And, you know, we can intensify prosecution if somebody is going to continue to be a repeat offender. But I think one of the things we need to be careful is we have a no investment besides pass-through grant money from the federal side to these agencies. And so I really want to make sure that the discussion tonight is building towards actionable items versus reviewing and maybe even saying, well, we have this homelessness because of these service providers. I don't think that's true at all. And I just want to make sure that we stay in fruitful bearing of actionable items.
Thank you. Any other questions for Chris?
Mr. Casey.
Let me introduce you to the new executive director of Hope Campus. I left them all this. Casey Wilson.
Casey, did you have any additional comments?
You know, I hate to even dive into numbers and stuff, but so far this year, you know, we've moved 18 individuals into housing, the rapid housing that Sharon talked about, it's very significant. And we have held 32 individuals on employment so far this year. You know, every day, I think people don't understand what our program looks like. Out of our 140 beds, 60 of them are for emergency shelter, meaning individuals that just need somewhere to stay for an emergency. the other 80 beds are for people that want to work towards self-sufficiency, and they're willing to go to like job skills classes. We call it hook care, but it's life skills, and they build life skills, and if they're not working, they have to go to that class. And, you know, and they're also agreeing to work towards self-sufficiency and see a case manager once a week, be guaranteed bed. So anyway, I'd love to show you all around, come all over the campus. Thank you.
Sure, would you like to have further?
I'll just wait, maybe have the opportunity when we get to the ordinance or something.
Referee, don't you recognize?
I just want to say briefly, you know, to everyone at the Hope Campus, staff, board members, volunteers, donors, things like that, thank you for what you do in general, but thank you in particular for the service you provide when we have, you know, our subarctic, our occasional blasts of super cold weather. As far as I can tell and understand, you all are the facility that is open as a warming, you know, low barrier warming facility for people. Of course, we can only encourage people to go. You know, not everyone that is unhoused is going to, you know, take you up on that shelter on a cold night or a very cold night. But I know that over the years, I don't think it's an exaggeration to say that you've literally saved the lives of hundreds and hundreds of people from inclement and very, very dangerous weather. So thank you very much, everyone who's involved from the top down at the Hope Campus for that service you provide. It's life-saving, quite literally. Thank you very much.
And that's been 746 beds we provided for you so far this year.
I don't know if we're ready for it now. One of the things that didn't happen last time is the CBID and the Downtown Business Owners Association. So, I'd like to hear from them. I know it's one of the items, I don't know if we're ready to go there. But I'd love to hear from those guys. I think there's some representatives here if Hope or Next Step or any of our other providers wanted to weigh in.
If there was further discussion to what we have in item A, we can go to B, and hear from CBID.
It seems like we're, and just a clarification, but it seems like we're kind of progressing in reverse order through the agenda. You know, for people who are following along, probably we've been going more like 2C, now we're going to do 2B.
Yeah.
And I think A is kind of, at least in our packet, with some of the items that Greg McCann put together. I know he'll probably want to share about that. So, I mean, it's not a criticism, it's just I think that's the order we're actually going. So, sorry.
You good with that? Going reverse like that?
That's fine.
I mean, as long as we get to all of them.
Yeah.
I'm good with that.
Yeah.
Would you guys from CBID, would y'all want to? Yeah. If you're good, Mayor's not going to be.
Keep law and really keep an eye on what's going on. As far as comment, I can say that I've noticed that the police department, their increased effort shows. I see them, I had an incident last week, I sitting in my front door, one of the buildings downtown, told him to leave, come didn't, and next day he's still there camped out. So I called this new number that the chief gave these posters they had made. Within 5 minutes, officer was there. She took care of it, very polite, just like that. And that was the first time I called that number. I do care. But I have rights too with my property. And so there's gotta be that fine balance. But when you have the duplication of services and they're hodgepodge mixed around downtown, if those services could come together, and Chris says they have the room over there, on campus, I own property, I'm the biggest neighbor across the street. I don't oppose building the shelter they talked about and opening the door more. Get them over there, you know, you consolidate all these services, and I know that the Sharon's group with Next Step, they're trying to get there, a little bit of time, and get all the services together. And they're coming for their meals and their coffee and all that, and it's all the same spot. That's gonna help get them together, and those that want help, more than just a free meal, then they can get it. But I think the only answer is when our different services, over the years I've seen where they kind of, everybody had their own mission, and they did, it was their part. But it seems that they're starting to come together, and they can do that. I believe we can see a big improvement. When I say a big improvement, homeless is going to be there. There's many cases that's not going to change. But if the part that I carry as property owner and speaking to all the downtown property owners, we've got investments downtown. And we have our rights too, and it's not somebody sitting on the front porch in one of my buildings down there. And, that's my concern, and most of the, probably all the property owners downtown, there. It's gonna happen, but when we can get them, these different services centralized over the whole campus property, I think we would see, have the appearance of making a difference. Will we be improving or reducing homelessness? I don't know. The ones that are in that will be able to answer that question, but at least we've removed it from the visible front stage. And right when they're down on the street corner downtown, it's the front stage. The downtown, we want it to look good, it's the image of our whole community. People that drive over the bridge and go to the Park Service and the museums. That's our image, and we don't want the image of other. And I think that's about all I have.
Yeah, I want to add just a little bit in regards to the CBID and the people that make up the CBID and the owners down there. We all realize that this is a very complicated problem, that it's not simply put them in a house and you're going to fix the homeless problem. There's layers upon that onion that has complications to it. What we really want is some movement towards stability and accountability on the ordinance front or enforcement where there's a base level of it's not okay. There are certain things that aren't okay to do, and we consider from the CBID standpoint that sleeping on sidewalks is not okay. Now, how we get to that point, if it's with Director Kemp's model ordinance that he's got proposed, or if it's something short of that, but at minimum, we believe that there needs to be, you can't sleep on the sidewalks. You can't camp out in front of our businesses. You can't take a nap in our doorways. And that is the minimum of what I think a city governance is supposed to do. They're supposed to be out there for the health, safety, and welfare of the citizenry, and that's a minimum requirement. So we just encourage you guys to consider in some form, whatever that is, and with the help of all the coalitions of groups, that we have a certain level, it's not okay. You gotta not let them sleep on our public streets.
One last comment is that I know that this is about the ordinance that was voted down, and you're considering bringing it back. And if you went to the Supreme Court, I'm for that ordinance. I know Chief Baker's not. I admire all the hard work that they're doing. this isn't just downtown. Think about that. They could be in front of your house too. Thank you.
Do you guys have any questions of CBID?
Director Kemp, you have a question of CBID?
No, sir.
Okay, thank you. Director Good.
Thank you, Mayor. I just thank you guys for being here, Keith and Phil. And one of the topics was duplication of services that you mentioned. Phil, my question is, along with how to answer all the other hard and layered questions, the duplication of services though, because you have other entities other than our nonprofits, Hope Campus and ADJOURN, you have churches that have feeding problems, all around the city, particularly, in my ward. But how do you address those issues? I mean,
It's tough. Next step and hope that they're trying to work together now, and I think there's a time when maybe they didn't. But I admire that they're trying to come together now, and it's just encouragement of your church. They call in. It's gonna take us all. There's not an answer, I don't think. It's just, we gotta encourage everybody, and that's not a law. That comes from us and our heart, from working with our friends, our churches. But I do support this ordinance that's in question, because it is another tool in the toolbox.
Thank you.
thank you.
Director Martin.
Mr. White, Mr. Law, in your, you, Mr. Law, you mentioned these are minimum requirements, and I can agree with that. In your dealings, your business dealings with other cities, other, maybe you have businesses in other cities. What do other cities doing well that we could implement here? Do you have any examples of anything like that?
I don't have any examples other than I think that the grants pass ruling by the Supreme Court was a definite move forward, which paves the way for this body to take action, and it's the first step. And so it's frustrating for us to see that pass and then our own city not adopt something of similar action. So that's.
Okay. I guess what I'm, Director Kemp, obviously that didn't happen. Director Kemp's got some changes related to that we'll be discussing tonight. And, I'm trying to figure out if there are other ways other things that have been successful that maybe we're not thinking about. And, and my whole goal with that ordinance is aligning the homeless with the services, right? So sleeping on a sidewalk is not good. Sleeping in bed at the whole campus or food next to it, that's what we want. So we want to try to get that behavior to where they receive the most care and service. And so, are there other things that maybe you see in terms of your cohorts as to how maybe other cities are aligning those services better, aligning people with those services?
And I think, and Director Kemp's going to talk about the process flow, I think in his ordinance, and it really is going to boil down to philosophical thought on civil liberties and exactly what we can do as a city to push the people that are homeless. And when I say homeless, I hate to say homeless because those people are primarily mentally ill. There's something wrong and they need help. And so when those people are out there, they need to be pushed towards the services that provide that kind of mental care for them. And at a certain level, we're eventually as a society going to have to think we're going to have to push their civil liberty rights to the limit, and we're going to have to push them towards those services. So if we get something like grants passes, and then all of a sudden we can put an ordinance in place that's going to funnel them towards the services, I think that's a process flow that moves them to ultimate help. So that's my perspective on it, is we've got to address civil liberties and saying it's not okay, you got to get help. And here, we've got it. We've got plenty of services here. This is probably one of the few cities in the country where no one's gonna go hungry if they're living on the streets in Portsmouth, Arkansas, which I think is a great thing. So, yeah, but
I guess my last thought is, unless you have something.
No, that's, I think it's good, it's good.
We don't do, since we don't quit doing so, if there's more things that we can do, but this ordinance, if we do that, it's one more thing, we don't quit crime, you don't quit crime. You kids make the wrong mistake and improve, that's true, that's true, but you don't quit crime, you keep trying everything that you do, and we need to encourage these guys, and I want, the Rescue Mission Board, and that used to be a lot of what they do, but now it's just geared towards women and children. But it's always working together. That's all we can do is just keep working together. I don't think there is an answer.
Right. And just to make sure that I'm clear, we have an ordinance from Grants Pass. I think it was it word for word, or was it was pretty much the spirit of the Grants Pass ordinance, right?
It mirrored it fairly closely, other than the amendments that, when we came together and had our meeting and discussion was had, and our city attorney vetted it, made the corrections to fit Fort Smith.
Okay, so it was very similar to that Grants Pass ordinance, it was ruled constitutional by the Supreme Court. Are you in favor of that ordinance that did not pass this board? Or have you had a chance to look at Director Kemp's modification and have any opinion on
I
that?
have seen Director Kim's modification, but I was in favor of the thing that.
Okay, you were, yeah.
well, there again, the base is the Grants Pass. And so whatever we can get done, Kim's ordinance is well thought, and I don't know, Director Kim, you did a great job. I don't know who drafted that ordinance, but it has a lot of things in it. And one of the big things, and I was talking to Chief Baker earlier, and one of my concerns is, and what Phil was saying, is the coordination of effort. Everybody has to be behind this thing. I mean, if we can't put something into an ordinance and the police department not want to enforce it, or see an avenue to help those people. The same thing that the next step and the Hope Campus, there's got to be a pathway to better numbers. And I'd encourage, I know we heard numbers just a minute ago about how many people the Hope Campus has served, but that's always been a big missing component from my perspective and time on the board, was there's never been a true measure of performance, key performance measure that we can look at year in, year out as to whether it's successful or not, or our total look on the picture. So that's one thing I'd encourage, but Kemp's, we're talking about putting a camp downtown next to the Hope campus, and then, moving people through that process, but we've also got to step up our mental health services. We've got to step up other things. So somewhere in between there is a compromise, and from the CBID's perspective, we own property downtown. We want to promote the entertainment district and our property values. We have a vested interest in that. And so wherever we wind up in between, minimum Grants Pass should be put into ordinance. And then after that, it's up to the board and the services and coordination. So long answer to the question, sorry.
I'll say something, it's not us for our property. We're here representing all the property. Make that clear, city self-serving is for.
They're in agreement with what you're.
Yes, yeah, that's why we're here. We're here, at the request of all the property.
Right now, no. Appreciate it.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Director Kemp, would you give us an overview of the proposal?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mayor, and thank you for those that are in attendance tonight. My wife told me the room is full, and thank you for the opportunity to go over this. I did have a good conversation and meeting with the neighbors on the block, which is a group that meets at several different agencies that serve the in-house and underprivileged population on the north side of town. And that led me also to another meeting at the end of February with Chris to talk about this. They are two large non-faith-based agencies that are working directly with the unhoused and underserved. And so we're going to try to just get some productive work with them. And what we've proposed in that conversation and the outflow of that was really the concerns we had were, and I agree with them. And to be clear, I'm not advocating bringing back the previous ordinance. One was the criminalization of homelessness was a thing that was spoken of in the public meeting. How we handle people's personal property was another thing that was mentioned. The enforcement was talked about, like how could we really even enforce it? And then the other one that wasn't mentioned but was talked about listening to agency leaders is that it would really kind of scatter the unhoused population. And when we were at a point in time count, we wouldn't know how to know if we're being successful or not. So I do think in the future there are other items, but on this one, we wanted to focus on something service-based approach where we're leading people to a place where they can be to get help or at least be safe until they decide to move on. In other words, these are your options. This is who we have. This is where you can be safely. But if this is not adequate for you, then maybe there's another place for you. But this is what we do as a community. Something simplified, something logical, and the actionable items I just wanted to review. There's that metal pavilion down by the river across from the Marshall Museum. I'm advocating that the board send it to the planning commission, and if it fails, then the board consider to override an intensification of zoning for Hope Campus to have that metal pavilion on a concrete pad that's already been installed. And then the neighbor of Hope Campus has already given a letter of support for this endeavor, the immediate neighbor across the way, the pallet factory. But still, I would advocate we can outline with the privacy fence the edge of their property, and help zone and make it clear and understand. Allow them to be tasked with management of that pavilion under their care, and giving them a roll-off dumpster. You know, they have plenty of warehouse space where we can put tags on people's belongings to keep up with, and then under a certain policy that can be put in place, roll that out to be disposed of if need to. But unsanitary items could be handled immediately. But this would give Chief Baker and the police force something that they can do besides going straight to some penalization policy, but rather saying, hey, we have an ordinance where you're not allowed to do this here, but there is a space for you where you can be safe, and there are resources available for you if you need help. We have a lot of great people in our community who can help. And I think that will also help agencies. Chris recently had an episode where there was an individual who did not want services and went out and went to the public easement and set up his own camp in protest, and then became antagonistic with people out there, and there was nothing on the books to tell him to move, because he knew where he could go. And so this kind of ordinance also helps our agencies look at it. Now, the one thing I did get some questions about, I had to talk mostly about, I want to clarify on, is when I proposed, I put a line in there about a future consideration of a public feeding. But what I'm referring to is street feeding, not existing homeless agencies. Those that are serving go through safety training, food trucks go through safety training, restaurants go through safety training, but some group randomly showing up, one, doesn't go through safety training for food. The second thing that it does is Hope Campus and even other agencies have told me the same thing. Have people show up to feed in their parking lot and feed maybe 20, 30 people. Well, there's 160 people they prepare to feed, including that 20 and 30 that you just said. And so one of the things we need to help and guide is we need to come up with these agencies and do what get involved in what they're doing. Find the one that you're like-minded to, but really, food is not the problem. comments I'll make, and I stand for any questions or just to hear further discussion. You know, if once Next Step moves to their new location, a lot of the locations of services will be addressed. You know, the Salvation Army does public feeding, but 70% of the people that Salvation Army feeds are not homeless. They are people who are struggling financially and are trying to find ways to utilize their dollars towards other things besides food. And so 70% are not homeless. The Community Rescue Mission focuses on families. So a lot of what you're seeing is going to be fixed in itself in time. But then secondly, this ordinance will allow us to shepherd and lead with compassion, more than a compliance idea at the beginning catalytic point. And I personally, I prefer the actionable item nature to it so that we can actually measure, are we successful in this or not? Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for Director Skills, Director Settle?
It's really for Jeff and Lee. Can we get the ordinance that we had passed, the original ordinance that passed, and then can we get a red line copy of what Lee's proposing those changes? Yeah, comparison of the one that did pass to a red line copy of what Lee's asking.
Well, and I will just add to Director Settle there, definitely we can be done. But I want to be clear, I really didn't quote redline it. I made a 4-page ordinance into a 2-page. But I think it would be good for the board when it comes back around for a regular meeting, if that's where we're going, to be able to read the 4-page ordinance versus a more simplified ordinance. And I also add that it may be worth administration and our legal team, honestly, looking at what they might need to add.
Yeah, that was the next thing is, ask legal to look at this because we know that the grants passed was vetted through the Supreme Court. Is there a chance that something beyond that could have a legal challenge, and how's that going to be there?
And I'd like to respond to that too, Director Sullivan, I have the same thought. The thing I would say is that grants past Oregon went a little further beyond what I'm proposing. So I feel like we're a softer approach, but I do share your sentiment.
Director Rigo.
I just want to say thank you, Director Kemp, for your leadership on this, for putting together another proposal for our consideration, and thanks for the lens of compassion that you brought to your work. Thank you.
Any other comments?
Can the board get an updated copy of what I requested, and then maybe at the next board meeting or next study session, we discuss this, and then is that what we're for? Okay, thank you.
That, Sharon did, did you have anything else?
No, thank you.
Okay. Anyone else?
Mayor, if I could ask you a question, I know Director Sell spoke up. What is the next step that we can make? I could clearly hear what he was asking. I think he was talking about next step for it, is that correct?
That's correct. Director Settle asked if we could compare this version of the ordinance and one that's probably better to move forward with the one that was defeated earlier, so we can see the differences, then have that discussion as to how to move forward with it at that time, and we can see the comparison, the direct comparison of the two.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Real quick, Mayor, can I get, Director Gard to add, if he has anything related to that?
Absolutely. Sean, you recommend?
I don't mean to, for some who might not know me, my name is Sean Carter, Director of Neighborhood Services, also known as code enforcement. Not to backtrack too much, but just to kind of add to some of the information in line A, homeless enforcement. We have seen an increase of encampments in the city of Fort Smith, and there's a direct correlation with some of the things that we're experiencing. 2024, neighborhood services handled and had to do enforcement on 29 encampments for the entire year 2024. We are 2.5 months into 2025, and we've already done 20.
Wow.
Our encampments have grown astronomically. And out of these the last 5 encampments that we have made contact with, law enforcement PD's been great to go out there with us. I'll get a hold of Captain Rose, Captain Creek, or one of their bike units, and they'll go out there with us, and we have made physical contact with individuals in these camps. One of the questions that we asked them their name, we introduce ourselves, why we're there, and some of these camps are quite sophisticated, they're large, these are not small. These are small tent cities, solar powered. Solar powered, battery, inverters.
Making these?
Oh yeah, they're homemade, they're pretty ingenious in some of their ingenuity. To be able to charge their devices. We do ask them where they're from. Someone will say, well, I'm from the Fort Smith area. Then we'll kind of ask another question, where did you originate from? Well, I come here 7 months ago, I come here 8 months ago. I'm from Conway, I'm from Tulsa, I'm from Little Rock, I'm from Bakersfield, California. The last 5 that I've talked to, not one came in from being in Fort Smith. Not saying that they're in Fort Smith and Fort Smithians in these encampments, but the ones we've been dealing with are transients from outside the city of Fort Smith. We do try to direct them to nonprofit organizations, and when we try to refer them to whole campus, we are told flat out, we're not going to go there.
Who tells you they're not going there?
The homeless.
Oh, the homeless.
And just to clarify, I think the population you're speaking of are what is considered the unhoused. Those that don't want to go to Hope, don't want to go to Next Step, they want to stay outside.
Well,
is that a true statement?
That's partially true, Director. Some of them started at Old Campus and left Old Campus because, from what I've been told, the environment. And so they opted to not go to a facility to get assistance, and would rather stay on the outside.
Are they going to Hope to eat? Or Next Step to eat?
They'll, I'm not sure on their visitation of Old Campus, but I know they will go down to Next Step Day Room, because Next Step, they're great. If family shows up, they're hungry, they're going to get fed. So this is some of the things that we are dealing with, and we're kind of, for lack of better term, chasing a tail constantly. We go from 29 in 2024 to we're already at 20 right now, and some of those property owners, the property owners are great with us. They understand the situation, they're frustrated with it, but they're literally spending thousands upon thousands of dollars to clean their properties. We just dealt with one at behind the FedEx building on Beaver Avenue. At first, we thought it was a part of the FedEx, but there's a trailer park next to it. They own the property that sweeps in behind the FedEx building. They were fantastic. They hired contractors to come out there at a great expense to absolutely wipe the property slick. So you're not going to hide on that property anymore. But where some of my concern is for the ones that do no longer want to go to whole campus, now we're starting to get an increase in campus in our city.
Sean, what is the typical size of one of those camp, population size?
Anywhere, I would say, ranging anywhere from maybe 8 to 16, 20 people. And so, it's one thing I wanted to add. Neighborhood Services has been dealing with encampments under our nuisance ordinance on dealing with the actual materialistic items. On March 4th, just a few days ago, it was signed into law to amend Arkansas law concerning criminal offenses, and it criminalizes unlawful squatting. It's now Act 238, was House Bill 1409. So we will continue to try and work with folks in these campus, trying to point them towards a nonprofit for assistance. but we can't make them go. But we will have to address the issues on the property, which is becoming very costly for property owners.
So we used to put signs up, we used to ask the property owner to put signs up. Now there's no need for that anymore. The law says you can't squat there.
That's absolutely
Okay,
correct.
so we can, anybody parked on private property we can move out. Is any of this on public property at all?
On public property,
Any of these encampments?
anytime we deal with something that's on city property or public property, we'll get a hold of that department and they're quick to move them out there. And so, usually by our help, just like the individual that, was brought up, that Director Kemp brought up about the individual who was set up a tent out in front of the whole campus. That was actually dealt with by our department. Chris reached out to us because, kind of frustrated with it. And he goes, Sean, can you help me with this? And so we explained the process to Chris, and we said for us to be able to be in an official capacity, we gave notification to Chris. We actually went out there, tried to make contact with this individual he was a hospital person. And so we had to let him know that you got X amount of time, you're gonna have to move your stuff out of here on the public right away. It's a violation of our, nuisance abatement ordinance. And Chris wanted me to eventually pack up his stuff and he took off. So those are the things that we're having to address. And even we're sharing that. Sharing back there, bless her heart, on her new area, we got homeless piling up on it. And so we're trying to help her out get that thing done.
So, this is just for clarity around the discussion, not as it's not a pithy point to say that, there shouldn't be more steps we should take or anything like that. But is it accurate to say, whether it's from state law or local codes or ordinances already on the books, whether you're talking about public property or private property, of course, it's currently on the books at some level that it is illegal to do that activity without permission, right?
That's correct.
So, I would suggest that the things that we contemplate do moving forward aren't just, are things that aren't necessarily duplicative, but perhaps, work in new areas or areas where we have not yet, where there's not yet settled law. So, this activity that you're talking about is illegal on the books at present, and we do what we can, as you described, to enforce it as best we can.
With the new law that has just been signed into effect, I do want to make one thing clear when it comes from neighborhood services. This is a tool that does criminalize squatting on property, unless you have a signed lease by an owner. But we're going to handle it the same way we've always been handling it, to try and talk to the individual, try to encourage them to move on, to find services somewhere, to move off the property. But we will now be able to make them aware that what you're doing is a criminal offense. And you need to find another place to go or another place to locate. It's hopefully a safe housing area. So we're not really going to change any way that we're doing our enforcement at all right now, unless I'm directed to. So I did bring a copy for y'all. I'm going to take one. That is the new law that's been signed into effect. That's about what I had to add right now, and I'll be here when we move on to the next item. If you have any questions with me with regards to opening or anything like that, I'll be here. Did anybody have a question for me at this moment?
Thank you. Are there any other comments or questions on item 2 at all? ADJOURN. Not, I'm asking for them to review the preliminary agenda for March 18th. Especially this time we go to the citizen forum.
We do have 5 individuals that have signed in. The first being Stephen Kurtz, and you will have 5 minutes to address the board.
Stephen Kurtz, I want to thank you for dealing with this issue again because it's so important. And I'd like to thank Director Kemp for his careful work we wanted to stress that we appreciate the compassionate amendments, as you've already said, and the positive step for trying to avoid getting these people caught up in the criminal justice system as much as possible, just as Sean was saying, because that just complicates their lives so much. I believe we've talked about legal issues, and those are so important, and the issues that involve both the property rights and the rights of citizens and all that. We should also, I think, as people, keep in mind that all of these discussions hopefully will take place within a foundation of our ethical requirements and perspectives. I know all faiths share the basic golden rule principle of doing unto others as you would have others do unto them. I know specifically as Christians we appeal to the ethics of the Good Samaritan, which helps a person without asking background questions of them. And the Matthew and my perspective of helping police the thieves. So those are the questions that I bring to discussions like this. But I do agree so much that homelessness is complex. It's been said tonight by the CBID. It is complex. And so many people, places, have adopted the philosophy of housing first because of how complex it is to deal with other issues if a person is not housed. So cognitive issues or medical issues or addiction issues, those are almost impossible to begin to address unless it has stable housing. I think lumber housing is emergency, lowest bar level housing, that's great. But there has to be transitional housing, like things that Next Step is doing and that some of the churches are supporting. And with the goal towards establishing viable long-term housing for people. So many other issues may be addressed. So thank you so much.
Quentin Cunningham?
My name is Quentin Cunningham. I've been a Fort Smith native since I was 3. Been here for a while. In 2017, I personally faced homelessness here in Fort Smith. It was incredibly difficult, and it was through no action of my own. I was robbed blind. I had no money for a month. That month was enough to put me out on the streets. The first night, I slept in a McDonald's, and I was at the Walmart on zero. A gentleman came up to me in the morning, a large biker guy. I braced myself for a conflict. Tapped me on the shoulder, said, "Hey, are you okay?" I just kind of brushed him off. Didn't want anybody to know my circumstance. He taps me again and says, "No, are you okay?" He knew what I was going through. And I feel like that's something a lot of people don't understand, is that homelessness is something that really nobody will get from the full picture up until it happens to them. I didn't. I know a lot of people in this room. At the end of the day, it's people. It's all people. I am very much in favor of the new ordinance. I feel like it's a good approach. Compassion first, which I think is what's needed. Because it's not always just the mentally unwell or drug addicts. Sometimes it's your neighbors like me who just end up out there. I've been in law for 7 years now as a paralegal, and I can't tell you how many of my clients have ended up close to homeless, if not living out of their car by the end of the case, just because they were in a car accident and couldn't work for a couple months. This isn't any fault of theirs. It's just bad circumstances. So I hope the board considers when moving forward with this to put the person first. I am sympathetic to the plights of business owners for sure, but at the end of the day, we really need to face it with compassion. Thank you.
Quentin,
Yes.
thank you for sharing with us. It's very brave what you did. Thank you very much.
Anytime. Glad to share my story. Thank you for listening.
Next we have Chris Cadelli.
Yeah, I certainly would support, quite frankly, either plan. I do like Director Kemp's plan, and I certainly think that would probably be a reasonable approach to see if there is a more compassionate way to approach this. Although I don't believe that, you know, if I become homeless, I have a right to stick my tent in your yard, or, you know, on the sidewalk and, you know, block someone else's passage. I just don't think that, you know, that gives me that right. You know, I would certainly like to see one of them pass, just to provide, you know, more backbone to, you know, send these poor folks where they need to go, where they can get the help. I don't think they're gonna get the help they need if they're sleeping on the park bench, you know, on Garrison. So I would encourage that. I would love to thank Mr. Guard, for his hard work. That can't be a very pleasant job. I'm sure it's, probably one of the toughest jobs, you know, for a city employee. So I would like to thank him as a lifelong citizen. Thank you.
Next is Crystal Cadelli.
Well, I know the big topic tonight is homelessness, and I wish I had the answers to that, but unfortunately I do not. Can you hear me?
You get closer to it. Very good.
I don't have the answers to homelessness. I have a lot of sympathy for people that, are in the situation. My biggest concern, we drove by the Hope campus just because we had been hearing so much about it, and we'd never even seen it. So we drove by it, a couple of months ago, and, there were a lot of people camped out in the parking lot, but we also saw a lot of encampments just surrounding the area, tents, couches, just miscellaneous things. But the one thing that stuck out to me the most, was there was a gold van without license plate sitting in the parking lot. It looked like the couple of gentlemen were working on it, and, they appeared to be MS-13 gang members. They were padded up in that manner, and I do know for a fact that, in the last couple of months, ICE has arrested a couple of MS-13 gang members here in Portsmouth. So, not saying they were the people they arrested, but my concern is for the homeless women and children that are there, because there's a trafficking problem in this country.
There are no children there.
And there's no families.
No, there's no children.
Well, women get trafficked too. And so, and you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. And so that would be my concern, is just, how do we keep an eye on the residents of the Hope Center, and how, make sure they're not disappearing or being taken advantage of for their situation. So that's all I have to say about homelessness. Not really a topic I wanted to talk about tonight. I really want to talk about our financial state of the city. I actually have a question, I guess maybe it'd be for Jeff. So the 1/8 sales tax that Parks brings in from the city, is roughly about $3 million. But I noticed that on the budget, there was a sales tax and use, balancing out to a little over $7 million. And I'm assuming that is part of the county tax that is collected to make that $4 million difference.
Are you talking about the budget for
2025.
For 2025 for the Parks project specifically, the $7 million?
Well, it's under the 1/8 sales tax, yes.
Yeah, that's because, it does bring in about $3.6 million a year, but not all that is spent within the confines of the year. We might enter into a contract with construction in 2024, and it's going to be finalized in 2025. And so a lot of what you're seeing is projects that have started in previous years are carried forward and are continuing to finalize in 2025. Or even new projects that might start in 2025. So as we have budgeted for the projects we have under contract. And the same is true with essentially our streets where a lot of the budget for the current year includes projects that have started in the previous years, and they're only in that particular budget.
So we're basically using the fund balance.
We're just carrying it out.
That's correct. That's correct. Those projects that, you know, the capital projects, they take, you know, several months, sometimes years to complete. And so that culminates into whatever budget year that you're in, your budget to spend that money. And frankly, we may not spend all of that $7 million, so that will be carried forward in 2026 until those projects are complete.
So my question is, it looks like there's some carryover, in 24 as well, so we'll go back to the sheet. So my question is, with the slides, since we have carryovers and we're not spending all the money, why aren't we utilizing some of that money for the capital project at Carolina?
Well, we have carryovers, but they're dedicated to projects that are already in progress.
So no, we can talk offline on this, but you had over $6 million in the budget for, 2024. And then 2025, you have over $7 million, so it looks like there's some that's not tied up in projects. And what I'm trying to get at is, looking over this budget, there's.
Go ahead, go ahead, finish.
Your 5 minutes is up, so just say go ahead.
Okay. So, you know, looking over the budget, you know, there's a lot of, I think, things that we can do to help people with their water rates. I mean, we have volume sales, residential, Portsmouth residents are paying $12 million in volume water sales. And then our contract customers, which is all the cities that we supply water to, they're only at $16 million. So $4 million difference in Portsmouth citizens, and then all the cities that don't provide water to. I don't think we should gouge other cities, but I do believe that we have a premium resource that we should be, you know, taking advantage instead of putting it on the backs of our citizens.
Yes, we talked about that extensively, and the idea behind that is the distribution lines for these other cities we're not paying for. They fund
And I
it.
was here for that.
Right. So that's why they weren't paying near what they're paying now until we did the rate adjustment. So now we've more right-sized it, but you got to look at all the distribution lines associated with that goes into that cost.
And I do understand that, but we're still selling them a premium.
Yeah,
And we're selling them a resource they don't have.
I'm with it.
And I don't think as a citizen,
I'm with it. There was a thread of lawsuit.
I've already said what I said, it's
Yeah.
our water, we're supposed to
Yeah.
charge what we need to.
and I agree, I mean, we're suffering
Yeah.
as citizens.
Yeah, and here's the issue. We can't raise, according to our consultant, we can't raise it on them without raising it on ourselves. So if we were to go back and make,
Have you asked our city attorney?
I don't think so.
I think that that's a question for him, because
Well,
I think
have
that's a legal question. And from what I understand, there's no law saying that we have to do
That came from, I don't know if it's, I know it from the consultant.
As long as we find it.
Yeah, we'll find that out.
And last we have Andy Kostrick.
Thank you, Andy Kostrick. I love living in Portsmouth because of our robust and well-supported house building community on the subject of housing. I used to volunteer at Hope Campus once a month. I had to stop. I can't really use a knife because I've been losing my vision, but I'm tremendously supportive of it. One thing I did want to talk about is new housing, how cities grow, and how we decide through the planning commission and then when things come through, whether we give something the green light or the red light. And I feel like there is some information that would be helpful for you all to make decisions, yes or no. And that is when a new development is built, yes, it brings revenue to the city, but yes, it also comes with costs. And that cost is not something that is factored into that little packet of the questions that they have to answer. So one way, this is actually the gold standard, of sort of measuring that ratio of revenue to cost is to take the value per acre of the development. So I just wanted to walk you through a few parcels in Fort Smith. And I'm sorry, these are hard to see, none of y'all get to see it, I'm sorry. But right here is my house. It's in the newer area of town. It's 0.2 acres lot. It's about $340,000 value, and my value per acre is $1.2 million, which is pretty good because it's a newer area, up and coming neighborhood. Down here, more in a more traditional developed area, the kind of neighborhood that I am always up here trying to tell you to support more. Smaller lot, comes up to $267,000 per acre. So some things to consider when you have somebody coming to build a neighborhood, how much revenue and how much cost will this have? Multifamily is another type of housing that we have. So if you can remember, just my normal new house is like $1.2 million baseline. These are, lower income apartments, $651,000 per acre, which is also pretty good. A big box retailer, you would think has a lot of sales tax coming out of it. They're producing a lot of value for our city. But because of the amount of space that they take up, they have a big parking lot. Let's be honest, it's empty 90% of the time. Big box retail only has a value per acre of $372,000. So they're not producing very much value for the amount of space that they take up. There is one type of development that is surprisingly and amazingly a money printer for Fort Smith, and that is mixed-use developments. So this is Tipsy's Pub downtown on Garrison. Most of you would say it's a little worse for wear. It's maybe falling apart a little bit, but you can go on the tax assessor's website and check it in on that. Its value per acre is $1.1 million, worth about the same as my house. And if you take an even bigger development that hasn't been here for hundreds of years, such as this address on RA on Drive, this is one of the most valuable pieces of land. It's a mixed-use development, $6.6 million per acre.
Is that the hub?
Yes. Yeah, and this is just one unit at the hub. Each unit is worth $6.6 million per acre. And I don't know how many units there are, probably like 18. So this is the sort of thing that I would like the planning commission to let you guys be aware of when you guys are voting on whether to allow a development, so you know, is this valuable to the city or is it costly? And I'm not saying we need to not build certain types of housing, of course not, but it's just information that would be helpful for you to have to make that decision. And that is all I have. Thank you.
Thanks, Andy.
So, next week, we're gonna have a discussion about reallocation of the 2025 budget out of the 5 departments that I brought up, from their departments to the general fund. I'd like to have put in there also maybe a B, A and a B, like the B part to be the 2024 budget. And those same 5 departments to be all funded out of the general fund. Mayor, board, city administrator, city clerk, and sustainability.
And what kind of financial impact would that be on the general fund?
Probably $800,000. I mean, no, $800,000 to the water and sewer fund.
Out of the general.
Yep. Plus it would help the sanitation and the street funds.
I'd like to talk to the police and fire those to get their opinion on it, because it's gonna affect them if we take that money out, I'm sure.
I mean, not necessarily.
Well,
I mean, I think it's gonna.
tax revenue stay flat.
I think it's gonna affect any general fund surplus.
It will, it will.
Surplus. I don't think it's gonna affect any police and fire.
Jeff, what were our tax revenues flat this last month? Yeah, sales tax, and what's the projection for this month? Same.
Again, flat is record.
Yeah.
That's, I mean, we gotta remember flat is a record.
So I'm advocating, we're gonna have 2025, we're in the packet next week. I'm asking for the 2024 to do the same.
Okay.
I need a second.
And I'll give the second. I would like to see how those numbers affect our debt service coverage ratio. That's key. That is key. So that we take those out, what does that do to, and I know Andy, last week, and then even after the meeting, talked about there are some adjustments that can be made based on receivables, what those receivables look like. And that can ultimately affect, you know, what happens in the audit. But we really got to start honing in on what those numbers are. And my goal is to not have another water rate increase. That's my goal. So I think this helps it, but also we want to make sure how close we're getting to that 110.
There's nothing else. Thank all of you for being here.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody.
Good job. Appreciate it, man. It's good. I'm glad they got you in on the project. It was good. Well,